Hey everyone, it's Mr. Baker here, and today we're going to be looking at the nature of waves. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at the nature of waves, and we're going to be answering this question. We're going to answer, what is a wave? So let's get straight into it. What is a wave? A wave is a series of disturbances that are the same distance from each other and transfer energy from one place to another. There are two categories of wave. So there are mechanical waves, waves which are vibrations of particles in a medium, which is a material that waves travel in. So for example, sound waves, water waves, waves on strings, seismic waves like earthquakes, they're all mechanical waves. And you can see the example here of a guitar string being twanged, and the mechanical wave, the particles actually moving along or moving up and down as the energy transfers along the string. The other category of wave are electromagnetic waves. So for this category, we don't need a medium, we don't need a material for the waves to travel, and these waves can travel through a vacuum at the speed of light. In fact, they do travel in a vacuum at the speed of light. They all travel at the same speed, the speed of light. And you can see from the picture there, we have these two parts to it. We have an electric part and we have a magnetic part, and that's why it's called an electromagnetic wave. So as well as being two categories, there are two types of waves. So all EM waves, all electromagnetic waves, are transverse. Some mechanical waves are transverse and some are what we call longitudinal. So let's have a look at these two types of waves. So transverse waves will look a little bit like this. So it's sort of the typical how you would draw a wave. It goes up and down while the energy the wave moves along. In a longitudinal wave, you might draw it by drawing like a spring or a slinky, and you can see that in this example some of the springs of the slinky are squished together and some are stretched apart. So the wave would be moving from the left to the right, and the particles would be vibrating in that direction as well, and getting closer together or further apart, and that would be a longitudinal wave. So here we have a transverse wave. And in this transverse wave, you can see that the energy is moving from left to right, and actually the particles would be moving up and down. And we can have a look at that using this animation from PhET. So you've got this string, and you can see they've sort of broken the string up into lots of little particles. And they've coloured a few of these particles so we can follow them a bit easier. So I'm going to set it to play. And you can see that the energy is moving from the left to the right. So it's going along, and that's the direction of the wave. Just follow one of the green particles, and you can see that particle is moving up and down. So this is what the definition of a transverse wave is. The particles are moving in a perpendicular direction to the direction of the wave, or the direction that the energy travels in the wave. So the oscillations are going up and down, but the energy of the wave is going from left to right, and so this makes it a transverse wave. In a longitudinal wave, you can see that the particles, in this case the slinky springs, are moving left and right. If you look at the spring on the left, one of the springs on the left, it just vibrates, it oscillates around a point at the left. It doesn't move all the way along from left to right, but the energy of the wave is moving from left to right. So if you follow the compression, then you'll see that that moves from left to right. So the energy of the wave is moving from left to right, but the individual particles, or in this case individual slinky springs, are just vibrating or oscillating around one point. And they are travelling parallel to the direction of the wave. They're going left and right as well, but the particles aren't moving along all the way along the wave. So in a longitudinal wave, the particles oscillate parallel to the direction of the wave. Okay, so let's have a look at these waves in a little bit more detail then. So as it says here, a rope can be used to model a transverse wave by moving one end of the rope up and down, like we just saw in the PhET diagram. So if we move that up and down, the wave travels away from the source. The direction of the wave is at right angles to the movement of the source. The particles do not travel horizontally. Each particle in the rope just vibrates up and down. So let's see if we can label some of the parts of a transverse wave. So certain parts of the transverse wave have special names. Some types of water waves and electromagnetic waves, such as light, are examples of transverse waves. So here we've got our drawing of a transverse wave, and we can label these parts. So the top of the wave is called the peak. And if you measure the distance between two peaks, that length is called the wavelength. If we go from the centre to the top of the wave, we call that the amplitude. So this is from the place where the waves will be vibrating from to the top, and that's the amplitude. So notice that the amplitude isn't from the top to the bottom. That's a common thing that people get wrong when they're describing waves. It's from the middle to the top, and the wavelength is from one point to the next similar point on the wave. The bottom of a wave is called the trough, and we can also have the amplitude if we look at the centre to the bottom. That's the amplitude as well. And because the wavelength is from one point to the next similar point on the next wave, we can label that as the wavelength, or we can label that as the wavelength. So the amplitude of any wave is the maximum distance a point moves from its rest position, and the wavelength is the distance between two similar consecutive points. The symbol used to represent wavelength is this symbol here, which is called lambda, L-A-M-D-A, lambda. On a longitudinal wave, certain parts of a longitudinal wave have special names as well. So you can see that there are parts that are squashed together, and these are called compressions, and you can also see that there are some parts that are expanded apart, and these are called rarefactions. So at that point there would be a compression, and at that point there would be a rarefaction. So between two similar points on there, we've got a compression to the next compression. That would be a wavelength. You could also measure that from the middle of the rarefaction to the next rarefaction. That would be the wavelength as well. And sound waves are longitudinal waves. When someone speaks, sound waves are longitudinal waves. When someone speaks, the air particles vibrate as a longitudinal wave, and so compressions and rarefactions are formed in the air. So these are the things you should be able to do at the end of this lesson. You should be able to describe that all waves fall into two basic categories. You should be able to describe that waves in these categories are either longitudinal or transverse, and you should be able to give examples of those different types of waves. You should be able to label different types of waves, and you should be able to explain the differences between longitudinal and transverse waves. So this was our question that we posed at the beginning of the lesson. What is a wave? So a wave is a series of disturbances that move energy from one place to another. They can either have particles that move in a certain medium, or they don't have to, depending on what type of wave they are. So the sun's energy, the sun's light, gets to us by electromagnetic waves. It has to travel through the vacuum of space before then coming through our atmosphere and then getting to us. Sound waves travel through air, or in liquids or solids as well, but they've got to have particles to move around. And if you were to go up to space or to try and shout in a vacuum, then you wouldn't be able to, because there are no particles in a vacuum and sound couldn't travel. Okay, that's it for today's lesson. I've been Mr. Baker. Thanks very much, and I'll see you